tipping point is here from the most memorable tidbit from my 2-hour global warming speech in July of '03 were my comments about the science behind global warming. Now, 6 years later, as I head to the next UN Global Warming Conference, I'm pleased by the vast and growing number of scientists, politicians, reporters all over the world who are publicly rejecting climate alarmism. This is those who want to scare people into some kind of action. You know, the water's going to rise up, the world's coming to an end, and all of that. Well, they're rejecting these alarmists now. When I made those comments on the Senate floor, a few people were there to stand with me. Today I've been vindicated, and I'm proud to share the stage with all of those who now dare question Al Gore, the Hollywood elites, and the United Nations. Early in the 2003 speech, I said, and I'm quoting now, 2003, 6 years ago, much of the debate over global warming is predicated on fear rather than science. Global warming alarmists see a future plagued by catastrophic flooding, war, terrorism, economic dislocations, droughts, crop failures, mosquito-borne diseases, and harsh weather, all caused by man-made greenhouse gas emissions. For the next 2 hours, I presented the arguments by a number of leading scientists who disputed the picture of the future, and I argued that activists attempting to propagate fear would fail to convince the American people. I then concluded my remarks saying, with all the hysteria, all the fear, all the phony science, could it be that man-made global warming is the greatest hoax ever perpetrated on the American people? It sure sounds like it is. Well, my remarks were immediately ridiculed by alarmists in the mainstream media. Alarmists then and ever since then have used every name in the book trying to discredit me personally. Nevertheless, I continued to make my case in speech after speech on the Senate floor, highlighting arguments by numerous scientists that contradicted the notion that the science behind global warming is settled. You know, every time you quote a scientist, they always come back and say, oh no, we can't talk about science. The science is settled. The first time the McCain-Lieberman bill came to the Senate floor was 2003. Then it came again, the McCain-Lieberman bill, which is essentially a cap-and-trade bill, very similar to what we're looking at today. It came again. I remember so well because at that time Republicans were a majority. I was the chairman of the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee. And I can remember we were given 5 days on the floor to debate this, 10 hours a day, roughly 50 hours. And I remember of going over this and debating this on this very floor of the Senate in 2005. It was the McCain-Lieberman bill. And only 2 senators came down during that week to give me support. Now you fast forward to 2008. The same bill came up, except this time it was called the Warner-Lieberman bill, another cap-and-trade bill, just like the one we're talking about today. At that time, it didn't take 5 days to defeat it. It took 2 days, and 23 senators came down to join me in that effort. What do I credit for the reversal? You might be surprised. My answer, it's none other than the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize and an Oscar. It's Al Gore. The media blitz in 2006, which included an avalanche of magazine covers, hour-long global warming documentaries, celebrity rock concerts around the world, and of course, Al Gore's very own science fiction movie, caused an unprecedented response from scientists from around the world. Later that year, I took to the Senate floor and gave my next 2-hour speech debunking much of Al Gore's movie and the media hype. I said then, and this is again in 2006, quote, in May, our nation was exposed to perhaps one of the slickest science propaganda films of all time, former Vice President Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth. In addition to having the backing of Paramount Pictures to market this film, Gore had the full backing of the media. Leading the cheerleading charge was none other than the Associated Press. I noted a report that appeared in June 27th of '06 by Seth Borenstein of the Associated Press that boldly declared scientists give 2 thumbs up to Al Gore's movie. I took issue with Borenstein's article and pointed out that, and this again is a quote from 3 years ago, the article quoted only 5, listen, Madam President, only 5 scientists praising Gore's science, despite AP's having contacted 100 scientists. They contacted 100 scientists, and they could only find 5 scientists that they could praise. The fact that over 80% of the scientists contacted by the AP had not even seen the movie, or that many scientists have harshly criticized the science presented by Gore, did not dissuade the news outlet one bit from its mission to promote Gore's brand of climate alarmism. I'm almost at a loss as to how to begin to address this series of errors. Again, I'm quoting from 3 years ago. The errors, the misleading science, the unfounded speculation that appear in the former vice president's film. Here is what Richard Lindzen, a meteorologist from MIT, has written about the inconvenient truth. He said, a general characteristic of Mr. Gore's approach is to assiduously ignore the fact that the Earth and its climate are dynamic. They are always changing, even without any external forcing. To treat all changes as something to fear is bad enough. To do so in order to exploit that fear is much worse. That's Richard Lindzen, one of the top scientists at MIT. In that same 2006 speech, I then proceeded to give a brief summary of the science that former Vice President promoted in either an inaccurate or misleading way. Let me just read a list of these. He promoted the now debunked hockey stick temperature chart in an attempt to prove man's overwhelming impact on the climate. He attempted to minimize the significance of the medieval warm period and the Little Ice Age. Let's kind of put those together. If you remember, the famous hockey stick was the one that showed that the climate increasing in temperature, and then all of a sudden there's a hockey stick. That's when it started going up. But it ignored the fact that in the 14th century and again in the 16th century, we had the medieval warm period and the Little Ice Age. And those in medieval warm period, it was far warmer than it has been since that time. In that same movie, insisting on a link between increasing hurricane activity, global warming that most scientists believe does not exist, and it doesn't exist. The science has come out since that time, said very clearly that that science is not there. Every year they say this coming year it's going to be greater hurricanes. It doesn't happen. For 5 consecutive years they predicted that, and it hasn't happened. He asserted that today's Arctic is experiencing unprecedented warmth, while ignoring that temperatures in the 1930s were warmer than they were in that time. He claimed that the Antarctic was warming and losing ice, but failed to note that this is only true of a small region, and that the vast bulk has been cooling and gaining ice during that period. He hyped unfounded fears that Greenland's ice is in danger of disappearing. This is kind of interesting. If you were to say that maybe there's some truth in the global warming thing, I had an occasion, I say to my good friend who's presiding, a few years ago, not too many years ago, my background is aviation. I decided to replicate the flight of Wiley Post going around the world. And in one of my stops there that Wiley Post had stopped was in Greenland. And their history books are full of the time that things were really flourishing in Greenland. The Vikings came in. They were growing things they haven't grown. And then when the cycle went through and it started getting colder, then, of course, they died and it disappeared. So I think you could argue that, you know, we're going to have these cycles. God's still up there. We've always had him. We'll continue to have him. Back to the film, he erroneously claimed that the ice cap at Mount Kilimanjaro is disappearing due to global warming, even while the region cools, and researchers blame the ice loss on local land use practices. He made assertions of massive future sea rise far afield from any supposed scientific consensus and not supported in even the most alarmist literature. He incorrectly implied that the Peruvian glacier's retreat is due to global warming, ignoring the fact that the region has been cooling since the 1930s, and other glaciers in South America are advancing. He blamed global warming for water loss in Africa's Lake Chad, despite NASA scientists concluding that local population and grazing factors are the more likely culprits. He inaccurately claimed that polar bears are drowning in significant numbers due to melting ice, when in fact they're thriving. I have to say this, and this is documented. The population of the polar bear has quadrupled since about 1960. And today, of the 13 polar bear populations in Canada, only